These are 7C number 2 notes. So we're solving factorable polynomials. So these are only polynomials you can factor. There are other ways to solve problems that are not factorable or solve polynomials that are not factorable, but this one is, or these are our main focus here. So example 1. First thing I really want us to focus on is there a greatest common factor? So is there a greatest common factor? And what you're looking at is you're looking at each individual term. And so we're looking at 12, 24, 3, and 6. All of them are divisible by, and a lot of times you choose the smallest, or you should choose the smallest factor and think about all the factors of that. So 3 and 1 is the only two factors of 3, so we're going to divide each term by 3 and see if that works. So this could be a mental check for yourself. Is 3 going to work? So 12 divided by 3, yes. 24 divided by 3, yes. 3 divided by 3, yes. And 6 divided by 3, yes. They all divide out into, and the remainder is a whole number. So we're going to undistribute, take out, divide each term by 3. So it's your undistributed. Instead of multiplying it or dividing or multiplying it in, you are dividing out 3 from each term. 1 times x is going to be x here, minus 2. At this point, the 3 is a factor, so we're going to leave that there. But inside the parentheses, we have 4 terms. This is a 4-term polynomial. Go straight to, at that point, I'm still asking you to factor. We still are going to factor, even though we have one of the factors, 3, and actually that 4-term polynomial is another factor, but it's not broke down all the way. When you have 4 terms, we should look at the Punnett Square. Take out your greatest common factor to the bottom row, top row, that's just x. First column is 4x squared, and last column is -1. So I'm going to rewrite on the outside here. Those are your factors. By the way, that 2, the 8 is positive, so the 2 is going to be positive. So you have 3 that comes down, that's one of your factors, times, doesn't matter the order I'm writing these in, 4x squared minus 1 and x plus 2. That's going to equal 0. So one of the main reasons why we learn how to factor is so we can solve. And once we get it broke down here, we're going to look at 3. There's no variable with 3, so we're not going to use that to solve anything. We can't solve because there's no variable there. It's just 3. 4x squared minus 1, that's a binomial. We can look to see if we can factor it further because we have a quadratic. You can actually factor it further, but because we've already looked at solving quadratics with only one variable, there's only one term with an x, we can actually solve this binomial without factoring further. And it's going to be solved by square roots. And the last factor, x plus 2, there's no exponent, nothing to factor there. And again, there's only one term with an x in each factor. So we can break these down and set the factors set the factors with an x equal to 0 and solve these. Divide by 4. So we're solving these in reverse order of operations. This is the very important part. Square root is the opposite of square. Whenever you square root, I'm going to zoom in on this. Whenever you square root, you have to do a positive and a negative. There's a plus, a positive, and a negative anytime you square root. And then we'll have x equals a positive, negative. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 4 is 2. So there are 2 solutions here, a positive 1/2 and a negative 1/2. And then our other factor, there's only going to be one solution here, is -2. So we get positive 1/2, negative 1/2, and -2. And there are your 3 solutions to this problem. Example 2. So we look for a greatest common factor. And there is not one, so nothing. So we're not going to work that out. We see 3 terms, trinomial. And there's 3 terms, think a times c, which is 3 times -10, which is -30. You'd think of all the factors of -30 until you reach the factor that adds up to the b, which is 1. So it's 6 and negative 5. And we're going to use the Punnett square now. So now we're going to split up the middle term, and there's 4 terms now. First term, top left. Last term, bottom right. The negative 5 and 6 go in the other 2 blanks, but with the x squared. They have to add up to the b term. Greatest common factor of the bottom row. Greatest common factor of the top row. Greatest common factor of the first column. Remember, well, 3 and 5 is 1, and then x to the 4th and x. Remember, with variables, it's always the smallest of the exponents. Whichever variable has the smallest exponent, that's your greatest common factor. Last row is 2, and it's a positive 6, so positive 2. Oh, I totally goofed up. Those should be squared. Oh my goodness. So then this should be x squared and 3x squared. My bad. Hopefully you caught that. So now we have x squared plus 2 and 3x squared minus 5. So we're going to break up the trinomial into the 2 binomials. And you can try to factor them further, but you notice the same like the last problem. There's only one term with an x in each binomial. So when that happens, you can actually solve for it. You can solve with solving by square roots. You can solve for a variable if it's the only variable in the problem. So subtract 2 in this first case. Square root. Don't forget the plus minus. Man, I don't want to mark any of those wrong. So x square root and square simplify out. We get a positive, negative, square root of negative 2. And we've had a unit prior to this that square root of a negative is always going to come out as an imaginary. So you have 2 solutions here. You have a positive I square root of 2 and a negative I square root of 2. Then we're adding 5, so that's reverse order of operations. So addition or subtraction. Move those first, then division if there's multiplication. Then exponents, square root. So we're square rooting. Make sure don't forget that plus minus. So we have x equals a positive and negative square root of 5/3. And there are your other 2 solutions. So there are 4 total solutions, which makes total sense because the problem started out the degree 4. So there'll be 4 solutions. All right, example 3. We have, it's a binomial. Set up a binomial right away, 2 terms. And it's cubic. So that means we're going to do sum and difference of cubes. Well, this is going to be sum of cubes because it's plus. So we're going to cube root the first term, you get 2x. Cube root the second term, you get 3. There's your a, there's your b. Sum and difference, or sum of cubes is a plus b, a squared minus a times b plus b squared. So we have 2x plus 3, substituting in the a and b. 2x squared, I always put it in parentheses because we're gonna otherwise we goof up there. 2x times 3 plus 3 squared. Simplify this, so this is equal to 0, by the way, because our original problem is equal to 0, and we got to keep that similar or same. 2x squared is 4x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. All right, we have in our first term, or first binomial, first factor, there's only one variable there, so we can set that equal to 0. Problem is, our second factor is a trinomial that has 2 terms with x in it. We cannot just set this equal to 0 and solve for it. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to use the quadratic formula. If you have a trinomial, you can look at a times c as 36, and what 2 numbers multiplied is 36 that add up to negative 6, and it won't be anything. So you're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. I'll write this up top so I have enough room. Opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. Negative squared is, negative 6 squared is 36. 16 times 9, 36. I'm going to have to, sorry for, I 16 times 9, 144. Should have known that. And 8, I do 6 plus or minus 36 minus 144. 36 minus 144 is 108. Negative 108 over 8. And we have to simplify the square root of negative 108. That's our next step. I'm going to do that over here. So that's 54 and 2, 27 and 2, 9 and 3, 3 and 3. It's a square root, so we're looking for pairs, pair of 3s, pair of 2s. So 3 times 2, and then there's a 3 left over. So 6 square root of 3. And it's negative, so that don't forget our i's. I, that should be in there. So that should be, I'm going to rewrite that as 6 plus or minus 6i square root of 3 over 8. And the very last thing is you look at the coefficients or the constant terms. All 6, 6, and 8 can be divisible by 2. So 3, 3, and 4. And your final answer, 3 plus or minus 3i square root of 3 over 4. That is 2 of your answers, and I never even finished the other one. The 2x plus 3, when you solve that, that is your other answer. So negative 3 over 2 is your other answer. So there are 3 solutions there, which you look at your exponent, should be 3 solutions. All right, come to class with any questions.